Hi, I'm John Mallos. Welcome to this live edition of Connect with Me on the showroom floor at Ventura TV on this Wednesday morning. Glad you're here. We have our regular resident family therapist today to talk about adoption, to talk about, hey, who are your real parents and do you care? 436-ME-TV option 11. We're going to have a very interesting program today on Connect with Me. Back in a moment.
Tonight I want to discuss the importance of the television medium to the American people.
Welcome back to the program here on Connect with Me on Me TV Fresno. I'm so glad you are here on a Wednesday morning. A lot to talk about, a very interesting program, as was yesterday's program. We'll talk about that in just a moment here during the monologue segment. A quick programming note for tomorrow, and that is the mosquito guy is going to be, and I call him the mosquito guy. His name's Steve Mulligan. He's a great guy. He's been here I think once a year, every year for the last 5 years on Connect with Me to inform us about West Nile, to inform us about Zika. So he's been a regular here since 2012, and he's going to give us some new stats on what's going on in the city of Fresno and elsewhere. And then on Friday, we'll talk about the Armenian school, which is being renovated. They have a new principal coming in. And then I guess we'll pick up our conversation on Monday with the man from GVWire.com and George Hostetter, formerly of the Fresno Bee. And we'll talk about this issue that we discussed with our friend Craig Chardon, who has vowed not to come on this program again because of our lively discussion about downtown Fresno, or lack thereof, on yesterday's broadcast here on Connect with Me. It was a very lively, tense hour, and so the debate on Monday will continue. Not today. We're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about other things today, but the downtown issue is still there, and it's not going away. And for the life of me, on Monday, we'll pick it up and again pose the question, who in the heck is going to downtown Fresno and why? What's there? Is a street, opening up a street, going to make a difference? Anyway, you're watching us live on Comcast Channel 375 as usual. It's Comcast Cable TV, 10 to 11 o'clock in the morning. Call-in program, you know the number by now. If you don't have Comcast, you also know by now that if you have an antenna, an outdoor, and not a radio antenna. A lot of people ask me that. No, it's a digital outdoor television antenna. Modern day, 21st century, 2017 antenna. You can catch us on 43.6 and 13.1, free of charge, no charge. 2 o'clock in the afternoon is the replay, 13.6 YouTube, 8 o'clock tonight, 4.6 Biz TV, and the beat goes on YouTube after that. You know, back in April on this program, we devoted an entire hour to the issue of adoption. And Whitney Bunker was here. She's the founder of City Without Orphans. That is an organization that is trying desperately right now to eliminate all orphans in the Central Valley and try to find them a home. But on this program today, we are going to talk in depth about the multitude of problems that arise if you are adopted. If you don't know your family tree, your family history, where your ancestors came from, it can be a problem. Now, to the story that we showed you in April, it talks a little bit about Ashley's story. Ashley is a young teenager who was adopted, and this is a problem, at least it was for her, because the fact of the matter is these issues and, being adopted can be very traumatic. It's a traumatic experience for some, maybe not for others. I mentioned over the weekend that I talked to Aaron Judge, the New York Yankees right fielder. He's from Linden, he's from the Central Valleys near Stockton. He's adopted. Do you realize that he has never met his biological parents? But I want to introduce you to Ashley. Ashley's story is straight ahead, it's traumatic, and it's a gut-wrencher. Listen.
My name is Ashley Faith Vasquez. My middle name is Faith because I feel like I had to hold on to faith to get to where I am now. I was 8 when I went into foster care. Somebody knocked on the door and they said that they were from Child Services. I was angry and I cried really loud. I never got to do anything with my biological dad. Because when I was little, he did some wrong things and he went to prison. I miss my biological mom a lot. At one point, I thought I was going to go back and live with her and everything would just go back to normal and I wouldn't have to deal with any foster families anymore. But reality struck. It was like, okay, I guess I don't have anything to live for now. I was in foster care 4 years until I got adopted. I was thinking, oh, they'll say that they want to adopt me, but they probably won't, and I'll just live here for a couple of weeks or so, because I was scared that they wouldn't like me. I believed that they were going to adopt me when they told me it was my choice whether I wanted to be adopted or not. I felt really good that I was adopted.
Very emotional, very traumatic for some people. Live in our studio now is Peter Nazaretian. He has his own personal story. Don't know if he wants to share it or not, but we'll talk about adoption, about not knowing your family, and about your family tree, your family history. Where do you come from? Where are your biological parents? Do you have sisters? Do you have brothers? Do you have cousins? Do you have aunts? Do you have uncles? These are all questions, my friends. It's the, it really is part of life. And every family is different. It's not the traditional family that we all used to know once upon a time in the United States of America. A long time ago, decades ago, where the traditional family just grows up in one area, one house, and just one small family unit. Everybody's spread out these days, and many people are adopted. Many kids are orphans. They grow up without parents, and so it's a different age that we live in. 436-ME-TV, option 11 is the telephone number to call in if you want to weigh in on today's program. Your family tree, adoption, and all the rest is on the table today. Back in a moment.
Take a look at this. Let's play.
This is too hip for you. I'll slow down.
Let's play.
Watch all your favorite classic game shows on Buzzer TV, KBBC Digital Channel 13.7.
When you like Ventura TV Appliance on Facebook, it's nice. But when you love the Whirlpool appliances we deliver, it's even better. Our website is cool, and it's a good place to start, but you really should touch the merchandise before you buy. Touch the new Whirlpool Ice Collection. It offers a modern style made to create an inspiring kitchen experience. Save big on this Whirlpool Black Ice or White Ice kitchen. Come into Ventura TV Appliance and touch the merchandise today.
There are all sorts of problems that can arise if you're adopted. You don't know your family tree or your history. There's so many problems. You're talking about communication, self-esteem. Do you have the confidence in yourself? Are you always worried that you don't live up to someone else's expectations and maybe you don't fit the bill? Maybe you don't fit in anywhere, even in school. These are all problematic issues that we're talking about today. If you're adopted, or you don't know your family tree, call in today, 436-ME-TV, option 11. Our expert is here, Peter Nazaretian, and kind of hit the nail on the head, did I, in the monologue, or what did I leave out? And there's a lot to talk about today. We have a full hour, but you also have a personal story, so I'll leave it up to you as to whether or not you want to share that.
Well, I think this is an interesting topic today because not only affects people who are adopted and have family, or they don't necessarily know who their family is. A lot of those same traits you're talking about occur in families who do know it's a unit. Here's mom, here's dad, here's sisters and brothers, aunts and uncles. It's our family of origin. And what is our family of origin? Is it our biological family? Is it the family that we're adopted into? Is it foster care? These are all family units, and they're all considered family of origin. Technically, our biological family is our family of origin, but if we look at who you're raised with, and I think that's oftentimes who we belong to, the people that raise us, people that care about us, people who love us, This is a family of origin. So how does it vary if you're adopted or if it's a biological family? Or
You mean,
if,
how is it different if you're adopted?
in terms of, what do you get out of your family of origin? We are who we are for things that happen to us between the age of 5 and 10, basically who we're raised with.
Yeah.
So where are we raised? If we're raised in foster care, that's one experience. If we're adopted, that may be a great experience or maybe not. If it's biological, again, maybe a great experience, maybe not. Just because we're raised by a biological family doesn't mean that family's healthy. These are all things we're exploring today. Family of origin, how does that affect things?
Yeah, let's take this call here. Good morning, caller. You're on the air on Connect with Me. Peter Nazaretian is here waiting to hear from you. Go ahead.
Did you see that I guess you'd say a news clip where this guy, this man now, he went from place to place as a person looking for a house to adopt, a place to be adopted. And he said instead of a trash bag, he made luggage. He's a fundraiser for every child to get a piece of luggage to go to his next destination. It was interesting. It was actually on a news article. I don't know if you've seen that, Dr. Peter, or not, but it gives them, he felt in his heart, gave them dignity. They weren't a pile of trash. They were somebody. And this is just recently, I think about a week ago on television, it was showing this man fundraiser that no one's going to get a trash bag anymore to go from parent to parent or person to person, for a while, I guess you'd say. And, Dr. Peter, is Big Brothers, is that an adoption agency or what? I'm a little vague on Big Brothers or what they do. If you want to share your thoughts with me and the other people listening, be great. Okay, thank you for listening, Dr. Peter. Keep up the good work. Thank you, John.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. A couple of good points there. Going backwards, the big brother and big sister are actually volunteers in the community who can take over and help young people regardless of their situation. Maybe they're in a broken home, maybe they're in a single parent home, maybe they're adoption in the system. These are people who will go to a ball game and get a hot dog and spend some time, a picnic, go to the museum, just spend some time with a young person who may not have a viable parent situation. So that's a good thing. It's not an adoption agency as far as I know, but it is a very good, supportive, volunteer-based organization in the community. As far as that suitcase thing goes, I kind of like that idea. I hadn't heard about it, but I think there's something to that if a young person has some kind of a little piece of luggage, it makes them feel more like a real person, something, I'm whole, I have something that contains my life rather than a trash bag, the implication, of course, being trash. I know adults who check into motels with trash bags for a suitcase, so I think sometimes it's just, they don't think about it. But for a young person who doesn't have a family, doesn't have a connection, who's being adopted, is in the foster care program, I come with my little suitcase. There's a sense of wholeness there, I think, that psychologically probably helps. So I love that idea, and I thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Yeah, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, they do help out young kids, young boys who don't have, and girls who don't have siblings, and or even a father figure or a mother figure. So they do take them out. But as far as adoption, we have adoption agencies, and Big Brothers maybe kind of works closely with them. If there's an issue or a problem or whatnot, they need to get somebody placed, but they don't place people. They don't place kids into homes.
Right. It's just,
as far as I know.
That's not what they're doing. The adoption is a whole other thing. But we're looking at families of origin. One's adoption. One is, a situation where there aren't siblings or viable parents, in which case Big Brothers and Big Sisters
serve a different purpose.
Are huge and wonderful. I'm glad that that's there, but it's not adoption. Yeah.
Right. So let's go over the list. I want to know what problems can arise from being adopted. And not knowing your parents. I mentioned, of course, in the monologue that over the weekend I met Aaron Judge in Oakland. Here's a kid that's like a superstar now. Never met his biological parents, ever. I guess has no interest. He was raised by his adoptive parents, and those are his parents in his mind. What kind of problems can arise? Because he seems perfectly normal to me, although we don't know him personally, and what problems he went through.
What is that old phrase that children belong to the people that raised them? It's not about the biological parents. With all due respect to parents out there, being a mother or a father of a child simply means you are biologically capable of producing offspring. It doesn't make you good, bright, smart, funny, talented, warm, compassionate, nothing.
You mean just because you have biological parents?
If your mother and your father are your mother and father because they're biologically capable of producing offspring. It doesn't make them good people. It just makes them biologically capable. So the children, sometimes, unfortunately, as we know, that children are raised by people who probably shouldn't have children, not very good at it. Other times people adopt a child because they really want to give a child a wonderful life, and they don't have a child. So the match is there. You mentioned my own story. I have no problem with this at all. I'm adopted, and I wasn't adopted until I was about 4 years old. So I lived in the orphanage for 4 years. And so when we're speaking about what effect does that have on a child, I can sort of speak from that firsthand. A lot of it depends on the people you're raised by, if you're eventually adopted or going to a foster care system. A lot of it depends on whether you have brothers and sisters, which I did not. So no frame of reference. So you go from the orphanage to a home, and, well, I guess whatever here, this is what I get. I get Christmas, and I get my own room, and then whatever else happens. But adoptive parents aren't always fabulous, unfortunately. Just because you have them doesn't mean they do a good job. My mom wanted me, Dad not so much, so there was issues there. So, I had to work through some of those things. And I see lots of people who are adopted go through the same things. Why was I adopted? Wasn't I wanted? Wasn't I loved? Didn't my parents want me? I mean, there's real questions there. Sometimes parents shouldn't have children. Sometimes they're not capable of it. But we don't know that as a kid. It's what's wrong with me. So there's an insecurity, a lack of self-esteem that inherently is part of that process. If you're adopted as an infant and they don't tell you about it, then that may be something else. You were raised like like the regular child, and they're wonderful parents. In which case, no problems. Knock on wood.
What problems did you face? What struggles, should I say?
Self-esteem was a huge one. I had a dad who, unfortunately, was a little negative, and he didn't really want to have children. Mom couldn't, and so he kind of wanted the focus, and so he would do things to me when she wasn't around to let me know how much I really wasn't wanted there. Well, I didn't know you don't do those things to kids.
Yeah.
And it was inappropriate. But it took me, I didn't have a brother or sister to bounce it off of, so I didn't know that for many years. You kind of go, that's what that was. It took me probably 20 or 30 years of my life to reestablish who I was, because the person who adopted me, who was, I thought, a combination of, God and Moses and the Oracle of Delphi, because he took me in, I had to please him, and I was a good kid, but I was always made to feel I wasn't. Took a lot of years to sort through that.
So you were adopted by who? A mom and a dad?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so it wasn't just one figure.
No, it was
a single parent.
Yeah, and they couldn't have children. They actually, this is almost way too much information, but they were first cousins, so they couldn't have children.
I see.
So I came along, and I'm thinking this.
But you were treated well or okay by the adoptive parents?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, for Mom, no problem at all. Dad had some issues, but other than that, and a supportive family structure. Aunts and uncles and things who luckily embraced me as well. Although I had one portion of the family who, when I was advocating, when Dad got older, and I was, trying to get him some help from the family, they told me very frankly, "You're not blood. Why should we care?"
Yeah.
So. Wow, after 30 or 40 years in a family, one portion of the family, and this was his sister, basically said, "We never thought you were all that."
Yeah.
So, ouch.
Yeah. Obviously, I got to go to break here, but it didn't affect your communication skills. You're a great communicator.
Actually, when you're raised and this doesn't mean about adoption. This is if you're raised without siblings, you're always talking in adult language. Parents are not. There's no Google Gagas and silly stuff. So you're always dealing with adults, and therefore having adult communication. I had a pretty good vocabulary and a pretty good communication skills when I was 14 years old.
Yeah, but you weren't shy about it.
I probably had self-esteem issues that made it. I was not a combination of I like to be with people and I don't like to be with people. It's interesting.
Yeah. Did you have a feeling of abandonment?
I don't think so. That particular one doesn't resonate with me particularly. But it inherently is there for anybody who's adopted. Why didn't my original parents want me?
Right, and not feeling good enough, I guess.
I think that's a piece for a lot of people, not feeling good enough. Yeah.
All right. Peter Nazaretian is here. He has an organization, a counseling service called For Head Care, and the phone number is, Peter?
It's actually Fig Garden Counseling.
Oh, Fig Garden Counseling. That's right. I was giving your email for a minute there. Okay,
thanks,
Fig
John.
Garden Counseling. Go ahead. Telephone number.
252-9700, my direct line.
Okay, and he's been practicing for many, many years, so he's an expert in all this, and certainly does specialize in adoption. Problems that arise within the family, because he was adopted himself, so he knows the issue very well, aside from talking to families over the course of many decades here in Fresno. 436-MeTV, option 11. We're going to come back here on the program. Connect with me on MeTV Fresno on a Wednesday morning in just a moment.
When you like Ventura TV Appliance on Facebook, it's nice. But when you love the Frigidaire Gallery appliances we deliver, it's even better. Our website is cool, and it's a good place to start, but you really should touch the merchandise before you buy.
Time for that upgrade to an Energy Star qualified French door Frigidaire Gallery refrigerator. Quality appliances for the way you live.
Get the best selection, price, and service in town without waiting.
Come in to Ventura TV Appliance and touch the merchandise.
The Justice Network is here. If you haven't tuned in, you're missing a great lineup of gripping stories of real crime, plus an unprecedented effort by viewers like you to play an active role in making your community safer. You can help support law enforcement by providing information that may lead to the apprehension of dangerous criminals or find a missing child. Great shows and your chance to fight crime, only on the Justice Network.
In the Bible, and there's a verse, it's Jeremiah 29:11. It's, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope in a future." My adopted mom, she knows everything about me, and so we'll have like just a day that's just us, and we'll talk and everything. I haven't had a relationship with Dad before, and so this is new to me, and it's exciting. Since we prayed and stuff, I felt really close to him. If other kids were in the same spot as me and we're just about to give up, I'd just tell them to just wait, because God has something in store for you. There's a lot of kids, not like just in Fresno, there's a lot of kids who need a home, who need somebody to love them. When you take somebody in and they do something wrong, but you still keep them and you don't give them away, then they're putting one step of trust into you, and by the end, when you're ready to adopt them, they'll have your full trust.
All right, Ashley's story, a story that we ran last April about Ashley and her adoptive story there, her happily ever after ending, and she finally found, obviously, parents that would raise her even though she was adopted. I guess everything is going okay, but, back in April we had on Whitney Bunker. She is with an organization, the founder of City Without Orphans, and Peter, this is an organization that helps the orphans find homes. There are more than 2,000, almost 3,000 orphans here in the city of Fresno. So she formed this organization to try to solve that problem. So, doing something good to try to help the community.
I like it.
Yeah, all right. Caller, go ahead. You're on the air with Peter Nazaretian. What's your question or comment, please?
Well, I was born in Germany to a single mother who was a secretary for an army personnel, and he was married and had children stateside. And at 4 years old, when I was adopted by this family in Visalia, I had a whole new life, and things were good. I had an adopted brother and sister from different families, and life was good, and I didn't really ever question my origins until it came time some 30 years later to have children and want to know what my origins, blood types, and abnormalities or health issues or situations. And I had a chance to go to my hometown in Germany, and I looked around and just felt like I didn't belong there and that I was truly an American. But my question is, why don't adoption agencies give out more information about the origin of the adoptees? Thanks.
Thank you. That's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question, and a little bit of information on that. Many years ago, I had the opportunity, somebody said, why don't you look up your biological parents? Why don't you find, because I never knew them, why don't you look up your biological parents? I thought, well, who knows what these people might be doing or anything else. So I got a hold of the adoption agency, which is in Rhode Island at the time, and wrote them. And it was very interesting because I got a response back from, this is all snail mail, couldn't even have email in those days. And I got a response back, and the gal who actually handled my case was still there. And she was a very young girl when she went to work there, and now she
about
was
90 at the time.
She was quite
About
a bit
90?
quite a bit older, and been getting ready to retire. But she says, I happen to remember this one, and so she was able to, and yeah, so that was good.
Wow.
And they had I have some biological information. This is what the caller's talking about. What is the biological? You can be raised by a family and have a wonderful upbringing by an adopted family. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But what about the biology? If I'm going to have children, do I have a communicable disease? Is there a history of mental illness in the family? Is there some kind of
heart disease?
Heart disease. Is there what could there possibly be? And so it is. If you're going to have kids, it is kind of a what am I in for? Am I a ticking time bomb here, and I just don't know it?
Yeah.
So I was able to glean some biological information from my mother's side. Nothing from Dad's side. There seems to be some mystery as to who that fellow was. From England. That's all I know.
Okay.
During the war. And so, I don't really know what that is. So there is that kind of who am I and where did I come from and, what's my viability. And so when you're adopted, you said you went back to your town in Germany, which is wonderful. You're able to do that. You go back to your town in Germany and look, said you didn't feel at home, and I understand that, but at least hopefully.
Did you find that odd, though, that he didn't feel at home in that small little town
no,
there?
because he said he was adopted at 4 too, so curiously we have a similar thing. It wasn't as an infant.
What about inside your subliminal mind, doesn't it? Don't you go back? And...
We don't have memory process until 5 years old.
Yeah.
So what are you going to remember? Unless there's trauma, in which case you have muscle memory. But as far as remembering being adopted at 3, 4 years old, raised by people at 2, 3, 4 years old, no. If I asked you when you were 3 years old what you had for dinner last night, you might be able to tell me. But do you remember being 3? No, because you can't. Our brain doesn't imprint till about 5. So whatever that is, assuming that it's reasonable and not traumatic, it goes away.
Yeah. So it's hard to get information from the adoptive agency because...
There was an interesting, not so much now, but Freedom of Information Act has opened that door a little bit. But when I was much younger, the rationale, and I actually thought about this, suppose I found out who my mother was, hypothetically, and suppose she was still alive and she was living somewhere.
Okay.
And I go up and...
knock on the door.
Guess what? I'm your son that you gave away, 35 years ago. Now, somebody might open their arms and say, oh, my God, the prodigal son, you're home, this is wonderful, and, give you a big hug. But what if they never told their current husband they were pregnant before they got married and had a child? And all of a sudden, here I am saying, oh, yeah, I'm your son. And the whole family suddenly bolts and says, wait a minute, what do you mean, son? I thought you had children before me? Can you imagine?
Right.
Can you imagine the stink that would create in families? So, no, they're not going to do that. Once you give the child away, that's done. It goes to somebody else. We care about those parents. So opening that door.
Who are they trying to protect?
Both. The parents who gave them away who may have made a mistake early in their life and don't want to bring that up and create problems, and for the child themselves. You are not. This is the people who gave you birth. That's it. But these are the people that raised you. This is your mother and father. We mistake that, as I was saying earlier, just because you gave birth. That's just DNA. And John, DNA says we're connected. 6 generations back, you and I are related. That's all it takes. Everybody's your family, just a little more extended.
Right.
So be with healthy people. If you're your parents, woohoo, that's a big plus, a big bonus. But if your parents didn't want to, were not capable of, had issues of their own, they couldn't raise you, why go back and turn those things over? Why make a stink?
But isn't there a problem when you're a teenager and everything is going fine. You don't know your biological parents. You're in your adoptive home, and in your heart of hearts, in your mind, that your adoptive parents are your parents. But then suddenly, you're 25, and then 30, and then 35 years old. All of a sudden, you start wondering, hang on, caller. You have these inner feelings that all of a sudden come out. Well, just who are my real parents? I want to know. I'm going to the doctor now, and I have some cholesterol issues, and I have this, and I have that.
Heart problem,
Well,
whatever.
heart problem. And I want to know that, and I want to know who my real parents are. Doesn't that child have a right to know who the biological parents are, if he or she wants to?
Right? That I don't know.
Because those feelings might eventually come out. I'm not saying they will in all cases, but at 30, 35, 40, you're more mature, and now maybe you're more aware of the world. You've lived a little bit, and maybe you want to find out.
Biologically, I would agree. We're very helpful to know biologically what your genetic makeup is. But at that point, what I see...
by 35, 40, is it too late?
I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but what I see when people are looking for their parents, when teenagers suddenly, who's my real mom and dad? When teenagers want to know who their real parents are, it's because they want to upgrade their system. It's not because they have some great curiosity about who I really am. It's about, does my real mother and father own a mansion and a Rolls Royce?
Yeah, how much money do they have?
Exactly. It's a little self-serving. So, but let's get our caller and see what he has to say.
Caller, go ahead. You're on the air with Peter.
Hi, I had a question for the caller. I'm adopted, and I'm a little over 50, and I was adopted in Fresno, and even though I live in Merced. And I was wondering, is there any way to find out who your, biological parents were at this point? I mean, how would a guy start that? Do you have any advice for that? It sounds like you're not really for that. I was adopted at birth, so I was told. It's like you said, you can't really remember. And both of my adoptive parents have passed, and I'm not upset with my childhood at all. I mean, I had a great childhood, but it is somewhat of the medical issue, but just really a curiosity. And do you have any advice on how to go about that for somebody like me?
I wish I had specifics on a website you could go to. I do know that when I started doing it, it was snail mail. You just actually, luckily the organization was still open and I was able to contact them. Now I understand this information is loosened up quite a bit just because of genetics. So if you want to go online and looking up adopted parents or something like this, I think there are some websites that actually specialize in this. And it's a lot easier. This might be good news for you. It's a lot easier right now to be able to look up your adopted parents, especially if it's medical information. And since they've passed, there may not be a conflict that way. So I'd get online, put in something like, finding my adopted parents, something like that, and just kind of follow your nose to the internet and see where that takes you. Because it is much more out there now.
You can look up, and I looked this up last night. There is a website that I went to and looked up some information here and got a lot of great information. It's called the, are you ready, caller? It's called the Center called the Center for Adoption Support and Education. And I believe they're located in Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. You just Google that, and again, it's a Center for Adoption Support and Education. And so it's a professional organization. They deal in this type of things. But there are other, like Peter said, there are other organizations around the country that deal with this kind of thing too. That's just one website that I went to and pulled up all sorts of stats here, which we may or may not get to today. But so you were adopted at birth.
Yeah, well, I was, my mom told me that. They said I was adopted at like 3 days old, and, my, supposedly they were college kids that, got in trouble, but you always wonder, and I would not say my mom was lying to me, but it's just kind of interesting now. It was out of Fresno. I have no idea the agency, and I was just curious, if that you could even pursue something like that. I didn't know how, privacy records work and stuff. And like I say, my adoptive parents have passed, but I don't know if my birth parents have passed or not. They sounded very young.
Yeah.
So I thought it would just be interesting to, because medically, I just had a physical, and I am fit as a fiddle. And it's kind of like, you don't want to know in some ways. It's good not to know. I had a friend that went through a study about Parkinson's, and I guess it's hereditary. You can know or not know, and he chose not to know because a couple of his brothers had passed. But I think at my point in my life, I'd like to know, where I was from.
I think it's a great idea. Check that out, and use John's website that he gave you, and that'll probably lead you to a dozen others as well.
Yeah.
If you have any if you have any information about your original parents, what their names were, what your original name was, any paperwork maybe in mom and dad's effects that they left behind, if there's any information about it, of course, that would be a big tip too. Sometimes people find those to be pertinent pieces of information and keep them in their file, so you might check that out. But there's a lot more information generally with computers. Since the computers came in what, 70s roughly, they started opening up. This information is so much more available than it was to some of us who are basically looking through typewriters and documents. So good luck with that. I hope you do. And hey, fit as a fiddle at your age, fabulous. We just hope that keeps going.
Let me ask you a quick. Let me ask you a quick.
I think you're. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to ask you a quick question. What sorts of problems did you have, if any, growing up, knowing that you were adopted?
I really didn't have a lot. My father passed away at about 12, and that was pretty difficult. And you kind of wondered, and my mother never remarried. But at the same time, I had a wonderful childhood. Parents were both professionals. They were able to afford to have a child. And, I think, talking about adoption overall, it's a great thing as opposed to some of the other options, unfortunately, we see out there when people become pregnant with unexpected pregnancy, maybe an unwanted. I don't know if that's a good word or not, but and then like the guest with foster kids and stuff. I'm a CASA advocate, and I see so many children that come into the social welfare system that need to, have adoptive parents basically because their regular parents have screwed up, and it's just a heck of a thing. You have people that want kids that can't have kids, and people that can't have kids that don't know how to take care of kids. And so I think adoption is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And for me, it worked out absolutely beautifully. I didn't, interesting how the guy said, 13 or 14, 15, you're looking to upgrade your situation. I never thought about that, but it did cross my mind.
Yeah.
Well,
So
we all have natural curiosity.
Sure.
It's
exactly.
And especially as a teenager, and not with you particularly, and I didn't even feel this myself at that age, but I see this a lot in my practice. That kid gets to the age where they're starting to differentiate from their parents. They don't necessarily like their parents, They're too restrictive. They don't give them the freedom. They won't get them a car, blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe I'll get my original mom and dad, and maybe they'll be in a great shape, and they can do it. So it's really more of a self-serving, mid-teenage kind of thing. However, at our age, your age, my age, the biological aspects of it and the curiosity, as John was saying earlier, that kicks in too. So good luck finding your folks.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. I love your program. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hey, time to go to break here. Peter Nazaretian is here. And, here's the thing about Peter. He's been coming on this program for I don't know how long. No matter what topic I throw at him, he's able to come up with the answers. It's amazing how much experience and knowledge that Peter Nazaretian has. That's why he's on the program, my friends. I can throw you any curveball, and it just doesn't affect you, Peter. That's one of the traits that you have. It's amazing. 436-ME-TV, option 11. You guys are amazing, too. Keep calling in. 436-ME-TV, option 11. Back in a moment.
Frigidaire. It means the first electric refrigerator. The first compact electric range. Now, there's the Frigidaire Gallery Range with Symmetry double ovens. It's designed to cook multiple dishes at multiple temperatures, so you can prepare the entire meal at the same time. Frigidaire, over 90 years of legendary innovation.
See the full line of Frigidaire appliances at Ventura TV Electronics and Appliances.
You can find movies on over-the-air channel 13.3. Movies. Our name says it all.
Back here with Peter Nazaretian. We just had a call come in, and just a quick reminder, I'm sorry I had to disconnect that call because you had your TV blaring, and I kept saying, caller, are you there? And you couldn't hear me because of the television. There is a delay, so try to turn down the sound or just hit the mute button. It's the simplest thing. Or if you want to drive the sound down, that's okay too. Just don't have that sound up when you call in, That way, you will be able to hear me. I know Peter hears me all the time when he comes on here, and so here's some of the information, Peter, that I was able to extract from that website called Center for Adoption Support and Education. And we really had planned to talk about family of origin issues today, but it kind of ties in a little bit, and just some of the things that I had from this website. I was able to read up on some stats. The adopted adolescent, 1/3 of adolescents referred for psychotherapy are adopted, yet only 2% of the population is adopted. You find that surprising? That's according to this organization now.
No, I think when I was on staff in a psych hospital for many, many years, and this would be something that would crop up from time to time, that, adopted kids. And a lot of times, I mean, they're wanted, a lot of times they're not. So, I mean, unfortunately, that inherently brings a lot of issues into it. Caller earlier was talking about, the gentleman said his father died when he was 12 years old. It was very traumatic for him. That's a critical time in our life to lose somebody, a parent, adopted or biological. So these are issues as well. If the adopted parents break up, if there's 3 or 4 siblings also adopted from different countries, these all change the stats and create psychological problems. So no, that doesn't surprise me.
All right, another stat I pulled out from there. It says adopted younger children and adults enter psychotherapy at a rate much more similar to the much higher than the general population.
That's interesting.
True?
I couldn't verify that myself, but it doesn't surprise me.
But from what you've seen in your practice,
I
maybe
would say,
kind of leans that way, maybe?
Well,
maybe.
One of the messages that I used to hear at the hospital an awful lot when a kid was adopted or in foster care was parents resented them in some cases. This is unfortunate, but do people adopt kids so they can get a certain amount of dollars, or take in foster kids so they can make money? Yeah, there's some of that. And every so often they get the message that, well, you really weren't wanted anyway. You were an orphan. We just, you're lucky we took you. Now, of course, when somebody hears that, I will tell you this: anytime I've heard somebody in the hospital say they were questioning where they came, we wish we didn't have you, we wish we didn't adopt you, we took you into foster care. If a child gets that message, almost 100% of the time later in life, they express some level of suicidality.
Really?
Yeah.
Suicide thoughts?
Yep. Not necessarily because they're not wanted. They're not supposed to be here anyway.
Because they feel betrayed?
They were a mistake.
Betrayed?
They weren't. No, they just weren't supposed to be here. So if they step off the planet, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Hang on, caller.
I'm not supposed to be here. The parent says, we wish you weren't born. Oh, well, I guess I'm not supposed to be here then. So if I eliminate myself, that's the way the world is really supposed to be. It's a weird situation.
So it's a feeling of not being wanted.
Yeah, I don't belong.
All right, caller, go ahead. You're on the air with Peter.
John, I had some advice for the previous caller about how he could locate his birth parents.
Yeah.
Something that I did. I was adopted at birth myself, and I just went to the Ancestry.com website.
Okay. All right, that's a good idea. I didn't even think of that, because we see those commercials all the time. And so, caller, are you still there? Oh, you're gone. Okay, so I was going to ask the caller, if you're still watching or listening, how did that work out? Going to Ancestry.com, we see the commercials. I still am not sure how that website works. I guess you do it all through the internet.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I have a number of clients who've gone on there. It almost can be obsessive. Finding out as you start to track, you're able to, because the internet is so vast now. You're actually able to track families much, much easier than you ever did in my day. So if you're looking for adopted parents, or even genealogy generally for family units, it's so much better now than it ever was.
Yeah, I would imagine it would take a long time to do on the internet.
Some people spend a long time, yeah.
Weeks?
I can get. I have
Months?
people who spend months obsessing over it and following the trains back to the 13th century or something. So it can get pretty involved.
Yeah, you can spend hours and hours and hours on the computer just looking at that thing. You get addicted to it, probably.
Can be. I mean, there's a point where it's there's a sunset as far as the line goes. But when you're finding out I was related, I have a distant relationship with Teddy Roosevelt or something.
Yeah. Or Abe Lincoln.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That's pretty wonderful. Yeah.
So let me throw out another stat here. Ancestry.com, that's another way to get there. So go there and just check it out. Don't get obsessed over it, but just check it out. This website that I was talking about, and it's called, once again, Center for Adoption Support and Education. They say on there that school problems and runaway behavior, common reason for adolescent referral, are more common in the adopted population than in any other part of the youth population. Don't know if that's true, but certainly an interesting theory to go along with. Have you seen this in any of your clients?
Not necessarily. First of all, not everybody talks about adoption. That they are. Of course, when somebody mentions in my session that they are, if it's appropriate, I'll usually mention that I am too.
Hang on, caller.
Like anything else, you want to relate. So I am not shy about sharing that. But I don't. As far as the adopted population generally, I probably have many adopted patients that I don't even know are adopted because they don't talk about it. So I'm not able.
So
to
many
address
come in,
that.
they don't want to talk to you about it.
Well, it's not that they don't want to; they just don't. I would never know, and they would never say.
Okay. All right, caller. I see you called back. You're back on the air. Ancestry.com. How did that work out for you?
Yeah, so the way it works is when you get your DNA results, they match you to any relatives that you've matched up to, and that way you can. When I pulled mine up, you've got first cousins, second cousins, and all you have to do is contact them through the Ancestry email, and you're able to get in touch with them. And
so wait a second here. Let me do a little fact finding here with you, caller. Appreciate you calling back. So you have to go in and get the results of your own DNA. Is that right?
That's right. Yes.
That's step number one. What's step number two?
Well, it's all part of the same package. When your results come in, it'll tell you your background and where you're from, and your ancestry is and everything. And then it will also, the other side of that is that it matches you up to any and all relatives that match to your DNA that have already gone through the system.
So obviously you're placing your DNA results online, right?
That's right.
Okay,
well, yes, but it's only your matches are only available to people that match to your DNA.
You have any questions for him?
No, I'm very aware of how this works. There's a couple of different ones that do this, and people have been doing this quite a bit. So you're exactly right. And the great point, when you contact some of these distant relatives who you may not even know and they don't know you.
No, wait a second. When you say contact them, this is a question to the caller and to you, Peter. When you say contact, does that mean contact them through the website?
Or directly.
Yes,
or by phone.
You send them a message through the website.
Right.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
And then you get in touch with them, and then that person can say, "Oh yeah, I was distant relative of your dad on somebody else's side," and this is where it gets interesting because you start gleaning lots of information coming from different areas and realizing how connected. Like I say, 6 generations back, we're all related, so how connected we are. And those people might be able to say who your mother and father were, even if you can't find out directly by going that route. Through the back door, so to speak, somebody else might have that information. Sometimes they go to graveyards and cemeteries and look information on headstones and whatnot, so it can get very involved.
Wow, and so caller, how important was it to you to find out? You obviously went to the website and was doing some soul searching, and so you found out who your biological parents were, right?
Yes, I did, and it happened really quickly. Once you get your results in, I tried for years before this DNA thing came out, and I hired private investigators. I was never able to get anywhere with that, and nothing worked. But when I did Ancestry.com, I found that my parents within less than a month. Actually, the first person that I talked to that called me back was a second cousin. He actually knew the name of my mother on the first phone call. It was amazing.
Love it.
Okay, and so why were you obsessed with this, trying to find out?
Well, yeah, I suppose so. It's something that I always felt I needed to know, and I went to visit them. I flew back to I live in Fresno. I flew to Louisiana to see them just a few months after I found out who they were.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I didn't catch how old you were. Maybe I missed it.
Oh, I'm 48.
You're 48. See, so.
Yeah.
35, 40, you start wondering, huh?
Sure.
Yeah, both my parents are still alive, and I got to meet them. They had a family reunion for me. I got to see several cousins, aunts, uncles, you name it.
So this made you happy? Did you feel like you fit in?
No, I didn't really. It was very awkward and really strange, and they were strangers, and so it was very awkward. With my birth mother and father, I did feel like I fit in. They really welcomed me, and it was a great experience. But I didn't I mean, I'm not really sure if I felt like I fit in or not, but I think for the most part I didn't.
Well, you have to understand that you show up for a family reunion of people you don't know, and you walk in the room and they say, "This is your long lost cousin Henry," and it's a room full of strangers. And even though everybody knows you're related to us through DNA, you're still a stranger. How do we meet people? You may meet people you're related to every day and not even know it because there's no way to tell. So yes, he's in a room full of strangers, and they're all going, "Oh, nice to know. So you're related to Bill on Harriet's side." Oh, where do you go with that? You're a stranger.
Yeah.
Total stranger.
Yeah.
Just happened to be related.
Well,
So
I'm glad I did it. It was an experience of a lifetime, and I'll never forget it. And I'm still in touch with some of them to this day. So
Are you in touch with your biological parents?
I've stayed in touch with my biological dad and somewhat with my mother, and so yes, I just spoke to him 2 or 3 days ago. So we do stay in touch.
And another quick question before we go: what was the reaction from your biological parents when they saw you? Did they feel a little bit uncomfortable, or what? What was the reaction?
I suppose they did. Now, for my dad, he was that kind of a holdout. He didn't believe that I was his son, even though the family said that he was. And so he actually went and took the DNA test himself to prove that he wasn't my father. And he come to find out that he was.
Oh my God.
That must have been a cool moment there,
wow.
huh?
So he was trying to get rid of you. He was trying to prove you wrong.
He was trying to prove me wrong, and he and that's the reason they gave me up for adoption, was because he didn't believe that he was the father back then, and he still didn't to this day. And he took the test to prove that he was right, and he proved himself wrong.
Oh my God, Peter, what do you make of that?
Well, now thank you very much.
Hang on, caller, don't go away. What's that?
That opens up a whole different door of Dad saying, no, you're telling me you're pregnant, it's my baby, and I don't think it is. So now we have a whole different dysfunctional thing going on between them. And then the child comes along and automatically feels rejected. That's not my kid. I don't want that kid. Get rid of that kid. There's that biological piece in there that that hurts us. And if we're connected to him, and even now you said he went and took the test. Even at this age, this what does it matter anymore? But at this age, I still don't want to be your father. What I am, man. I mean, what do you feel when you hear that here's somebody who never really wanted you and is anxious to prove that I'm not connected to you?
And 48 years later, he's still trying to prove that you're not my kid.
What does that psychologically do? I mean, obviously, our caller sounds like they got pretty squared away and realized this was Dad's issues and not his. But if we're not careful, that can bleed over to our own self-esteem,
Well,
sure.
Let's ask him. Hey, caller, are you pretty squared away with your own mental issues? Are you okay emotionally, mentally?
I am, yes. And at the time when he was when he rejected and still rejected the idea that he was the father, it did hurt it did hurt quite a bit, actually.
Sure.
Because I found out that I had a full brother that they kept 7 years after I was born. They had another son, the same two people. So I had a full brother, and they were saying that, oh no, he's just your half brother because the dad, that's not your dad, or I'm not the father, and so I found out that I do have a full brother, and that was the father. And once he found out, once the DNA results came back, and he was shocked. He was the most shocked because he really didn't believe it was true, and he accepted me after that, and we've stayed in contact.
Thank you very much. And the other implication, imagine way back when, of course, our caller was Our caller was just an infant, but Dad, I don't know what the scenario was, but Mom comes up pregnant. He says, "That's not mine. Who you been with?"
Yeah, that's the question I was going to ask.
There's a whole, kettle of fish there.
You're having an affair?
Yeah, and then years later, it turns out, oh, it was my kid. So all those accusations I made, all those suspicions I had, all those resistances I put up, oh, really? It's a lifetime of going back on yourself. That's very complicated.
But even though it seems like the father had implied that his wife at the time, this caller's mother, was having an affair or being with another man.
Perhaps, yeah.
I'm saying perhaps, even though apparently they stayed together, had another child 7 years after this one, and accepted that child for whoever that child was, whether it was a boy or a girl. Do you find that a little strange?
From what I see on a daily basis, no. There's a lot of people.
You'd think they would have gone their separate ways.
Well, sometimes they would have happened. They stayed together. I don't know what the nature of that relationship is. Frequently, that's a domination, submissive thing. I'll put up with you, but you did this terrible thing, so you forever owe me. And the woman's thinking, no, it's yours, it really is, but I'll stay with you. Okay, well, but yeah, it's not my kid.
And it took 48 years to figure out the truth, huh?
And how much dismissiveness did Dad give that poor kid along the way? He's not my kid. You know, get rid of him. And this poor kid, now luckily did well. Thank you very much, caller, but struggled a little bit because your own biological father wanted to deny. And is that because of you, or is that because he wanted to get out of the relationship with Mom and that was his ticket out, but he didn't take it? I mean, there's lots of questions that pop up here. So psychologically it becomes a thicket.
What do you tell people that come into your place of business? You're a licensed therapist. You have been for many years. And somebody comes in. What are the problems that they present to you in terms of adoption?
Well, again, I don't get specifically people come and say, I'm adopted and these are my issues. They come up collateral to other things.
They come up during the conversation.
Yes. I don't know that I've ever had somebody come in and say, my issue is I was adopted and it's really messing me up.
But how prominent is it in terms of the overall picture of problems? When they come in for a problem, you have this overall picture of problems with this person. How prominent is that issue?
For me, not much. Adoption issues are collateral to bigger pieces. The stats that you gave from this organization are very interesting. Obviously, they've done some more specific questions. For me, people don't present, I'm adopted and I'm screwed up, help me. It's very much comes up in passing.
So they don't dwell on it.
No, I haven't seen that piece. I mean, they're more concerned with the state of their relationship or their financial status or their mental status or whatever it might be. The adoption doesn't seem to play a huge role. Is that to say that there's some people who are this affects dramatically? Yes, of course.
But do you have kids that come in, maybe teenagers that you see that say, I have problems with my adoptive parents. They're not my real parents, and I'm having
No, not presenting. They may come up to that like when the kid says, who's my real dad because he might have more money and I can get a car from him.
All right.
Maybe not specifically, but yes, there is some curiosity, but it's mostly self-serving at that age.
2 minutes left, but let me ask you this, something we didn't touch on.
Yeah.
If you're adoptive, you might look much different than your adoptive parents.
Frequently.
You could be different religion, different race, creed, color.
Yes.
The adoptive parents could be black or white, and the child black or white.
Yes.
Or Hispanic, or Hmong, or whatever. Does that present a whole different set of problems?
Sure. For the obvious
how
ones.
How so?
Well, for the obvious ones, I look Chinese, but my parents are white. Well, everybody looks at you. This is my son. This is my dad.
Right.
And they all look at you, going, "Well, what's that?" And then we explain the adoption, or they assume that maybe this was a war situation. Your mom was a different nationality.
But this is 2017. Are we to be shocked by anything?
I don't think so. I think it's just more obvious. If there's a distinction between color or race, then you kind of look at it and go, oh, there must be an adoption piece or foster care or something.
Right.
We sort of make that assumption now.
Right, and then we move on.
So it's just more obvious when there's a distinction like that.
But what effect does it have on the child?
Again, depends on the child. That's why we talk about family of origin issues. Does that affect the self-esteem? Does that affect the boundaries? Does that affect the trust that you get from your parents? I know you love me, but what happened? What happened to original parents? Who do you ask that question to? Luckily, Ancestry.com now, if you want to get some answers. But Mom and Dad sometimes are reluctant to talk about it. We loved you from the day you were born. We don't want to think of you being adopted. You're ours.
Yeah.
Or you're adopted, like Cinderella. The stepsisters get all the good stuff and Cinderella scrubs the floor. It happens.
The step-headed red child, the red-headed stepchild. Okay, you've heard that term before. The red-headed stepchild. Oh man. Okay, it's nothing against redheads. Don't call in and complain, or no emails. It's just a term that's widely used.
It's
I don't know why. I don't know why. Anyway, Peter.
Always a
see
pleasure.
You next time.
Thanks a million.
Thank you very much.
Callers, thank you so much.
That's right.
Great response today. Appreciate it. Always want you to call in.
And phone number for you is quickly
252-9700.
All righty, Peter Nazaretian. Tomorrow, the mosquito guy. I love Steve Mulligan. He's going to tell us all about the mosquitoes in West Nile and all the rest. Have a good day.
And away we go.
Here's the place that makes you smile. Stick around and stay a while. We're the home of great TV that's memorable. That's me.
Follow me, sir.
Call them classics, call them the best. Call them favorites, be our guest. Every day there's more to come. Watch and see, there's only one. Me TV.
All you have to do